Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to evening devotion. Well, let's see if I can get this right this time, because I had accidentally started to film this morning as morning devotion. Not sure really even how it got down to this point, but be that as it may, we're going to be reading out of Hebrews 11:13. These all died in faith. And here we go again. It jumped on me again. I don't know why it does that. I literally just put it on this verse. Okay. The whole verse says, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. And this is going to be very interesting. Look at how faith was counted in the Old Testament. It's the same way faith is counted in the New. Let's go up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to start in verse 6. But without faith, it is impossible to please him, to please God. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, must believe that he's real, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. He will give salvation for those who look for him, who constantly look for him. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. They'd never seen rain before. They didn't know what a flood was. I don't even know if they knew what a boat was. And yet, Noah built a boat. No evidence that this was going to happen, but they believed. Verse 8, by faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive an inheritance. By faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. The Lord didn't tell him where to go. He said, just leave. I'll take care of it. I'll direct your path. Verse 9, by faith he dwelt in the land of promise, as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of this same promise. For he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. By faith Sarah herself also received strength to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the age. I believe she was over 100. Because she judged him, God, faithful who had promised. This is what God said. They believed it. These people, faith and righteousness was counted to them because they believed what God said. They simply believed what he said. What's wrong with people today? Why can't they do that? And we have to ask ourselves, do we believe what he says and take him at his word? That's the whole point. Take him at his word. Take him at his word literally. Verse 12, therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, were born as many as the stars of the sky in multitude, innumerable as the sand which is by the seashore. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off. They were looking down the line to the future, were assured of them. They knew it was going to happen, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. This is not our home. We're going to a different home. Our real home is with the Lord. They believed that. Now, back then, they didn't have a Bible. There was no scriptures. For those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. And truly, if they had called to mind that country from which they had come out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they desire a better, that is, a heavenly country. Therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, and he has prepared a city for them. The Lord is going to do what he said he's going to do. Do we believe it? And if we do, God is pleased with us for that, because that's faith. By faith Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises offered up his only begotten son. What Abraham did with Isaac was a picture or an example of what Christ was going to do, of what God was going to do. Of whom it was said, in Isaac your seed shall be called. Concluding that God was able to raise him up, even from the dead, from which he also received him in a figurative sense. So, as an example, he was figuratively he received him from the dead, but not literally. It was an example to Abraham of what was going to happen down the road. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph and worshipped, leaning on the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when he was dying, made mention of the departure of the children of Israel and gave instructions concerning his bones. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents because they saw he was a beautiful child and they were not afraid of the king's command. By faith, Moses, when he came of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, esteeming the reproach of Christ, even back then, greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. He looked to it. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. By faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, lest he who destroyed the firstborn should touch them. By faith they passed through the Red Sea, as by dry land, whereas the Egyptians attempting to do so were drowned. God did all this to prove a point, that he's God, and that you can trust him. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they were encircled for 7 days. They have since recently, in the last 2 years, proven that. People thought the city of Jericho didn't exist. They found it, and the walls have seismic damage. There's evidence that they fell down at one time. Verse 31, by faith, the harlot Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe, when she had received the spies with peace. Rahab the harlot was righteous in God's eyes because she believed God. Amazing. Verse 32, and what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, and Samson, and Jephthah, also of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. How many people did Samson destroy with the jawbone of a donkey? Because he believed God. Women received their dead raised to life again. That happened when Jesus was alive. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. Still others had trial of mockings and scourgings. Yes, and of chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn in two, were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains, in dens and caves of the earth. And all these, having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise. God, having provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. God's got a great plan in store for all who believe him. For all who, as Hebrews says, eagerly wait for him. Behold the epitaph of all those blessed saints who fell asleep before the coming of the Lord. Remember, it was different before the Lord came. It matters nothing how else they died, whether of old age or by violent means. This one point, in which they all agree, is the most worthy of record. They all died in faith. In faith they lived. It was their comfort, their guide, their keyword motive, their motivation, and their support. And in the same spiritual grace they died, ending their long life in the sweet strain in which they had so long continued. They did not die resting in the flesh or upon their own attainments. They made no advance from their first way of acceptance with God, but held to the way of faith to the end. Faith is as precious to die by as to live by. Notice they didn't die resting upon their flesh or their own attainments, their works, what they achieved. They didn't die resting on that. They made no advance from their first way of acceptance with God. They stuck with their first love. That's what we should be doing. Didn't Jesus tell us to do that? Go back to your first love. Yeah. But held to the way of faith to the end. Dying in faith has distinct preference to the past. They believed the promises which had gone before and were assured that their sins were blotted out through the mercy of God. This is before the atoning blood. Dying in faith has to do with the present. These saints were confident that their acceptance with God. They enjoyed the beams of his love and rested in his faithfulness. They believed him. They trusted him. Dying in faith looks into the future. They fell asleep affirming that the Messiah would surely come, and that when he would, in the last days, appear upon the earth, they would rise from their graves to behold him. What did Job say? I know who my Messiah is. I know who my Redeemer is. And my eyes shall see him. To them, the pains of death were but the birth pangs of a better state. To die is gain, as Paul says. Take courage, my soul, as thou readest this epitaph. Thy course through grace is one of faith, and sight seldom cheers thee. Just to look at the world today, this has also been the pathway of the brightest and the best. We walk the path of those who went before us, walking in the same way. Faith was the orbit in which these stars of the first magnitude moved all the time of their shining here. And happy art thou that it is thine. They paved the way for us. All the stuff they did prepared everything for us. Look anew tonight to Jesus, the author, the starter, and the finisher, the redeemer of thy faith. And thank him for giving thee like precious faith with souls now in glory. We stand with a group of elite individuals who, having hearing the promises of God, having listened to the words of the Redeemer, because they heard his words back then too, even though they weren't written down yet, and believed what he said. This is what you say, I believe it. You created all things, you know what's going on, I don't. I trust you. Were they perfect? No. Heck no. The Bible records it over and over again. But they continued to believe. They continued to believe and walk in faith and to trust God with all things. We need to do that today, now more than ever, with what we see going on, because we are marked out as a very unique group of people. In that, number one, we were born here at the end times. The people of the past wanted to see this time. They wanted to see these things that they were being told about, and they didn't. They wanted to see the age of grace, and they didn't. Number two, we were selected to be born now and to be awake and to see the things that we're seeing and to be able to talk about them in some degree. Warning people, the coming of the wrath of God. Get saved now, before the rapture happens, or you will be left here. And number three, we're part of the group that's going to get raptured. I mean, some of us have gone on, but I mean, we're within the last few years of that final generation. What does Psalm 90:10 say? Generation is 70 years, 80 if by strength, but its boast is labor and sorrows. So that last 10 years from 70 to 80 is going to be a rough 10 years. Hello, we're there. What an amazing thing to witness. What an incredible circumstance to be in. We are that group. And there are people that are saved that we're going to see in heaven that are going to recognize us as a very unique group that are saved now versus other people. And that doesn't put us in a higher elevation, but it's unique that just 100 years ago there were people that were alive that wanted to see this time and didn't see it. But they believed God and trusted him that it was going to happen anyway. 500 years ago, 1,500 years ago, 2,000 years ago, and on and on. But we're here now, and we're a part of that group. We're members of that family, those children of God, those who believed and trusted him and called on him. And when the word came, people believed the word, trusted the word. In fact, it said in the New Testament, we have the more sure word. We saw it, we touched him, we slept, we ate, all these things we did with Christ, but we have the more sure word. That is to be believed over those things, over those experiences. So let us believe the word. Let us believe God. Let us trust him in all things and never, ever, ever let go of the wonderful gift we have and the recognition and realization of the wonderful privilege we have of being born now, at this time, with open eyes to see, an open heart to receive and understand, and an open book in front of us to tell us all of these things and how it's going to play out. If that's what God said, let us trust him and take him at his word and continue to walk in faith. If it comes our time to die, we die in faith. But if it comes our time to keep walking, then we keep walking in faith. It's so simple. It's so easy. There's nothing magical or mystical about it. Just believe. This is what God said. I believe it. That's what you said, Lord. I'm going to take you at your word. Now, what stood them out above us was that they believed without having seen. We've gotten to see a bunch of stuff. We've got all the historical record to show us. Just wait until everything changes. People are going to freak out because they're going to be like, whoa, they were right. No, we weren't. God was. And he's been telling us for thousands of years. Stay in the faith, brothers. Fight for the faith. No matter what you see others do or hear others say, stay in the faith. Walk in faith. Do everything in faith. Operate in faith. Believing God and his word. What else do we have to look forward to in this life but him? I mean, we're not citizens. We're not earth dwellers. We're citizens of heaven. We're children of God. Let us act like it. And let us show those watching us that we are those same people also. I love you all very much. I bless you all in Jesus' name, and I'll see you in the next video.